quite some time.
I just jumped ahead. Did somebody else have their hand up?
I just want permission to stay in because I am no longer in an accessibility position, but I think the work is very important. So in order to get my boss's permissions to kind of stay involved, I've taken a different tack, which I actually think might tie into the recording of math. I've been exploring Microsoft's Bing AI.
Okay.
And what I have done is I have uploaded images with graphs in them. And not saying anything about what the graph is, I say, please tell me about the graph. So far, it has been able to do things at least on equivalent of what a human would have to do is, writing an alternative text to what the graph is. Very time consuming work that this Bing has done. And this is, I am not a mathematician, but I'm such a believer in, finding bridges, if you will. And I compared the graph to descriptions given by different experts in the field, and it seemed to hit all the major points. It was, each point was sequential. So if you guys and ladies don't care, I'd like to remain in this group, even though technically I'm not an accessibility person, because I do think descriptions of graphs, one, is very mathematical, and two, is a powerful time saver to exhausted faculty. And so far, seems to be working.
That sounds amazing. And of course, Sharon, you are always welcome to come along to these meetings, because
yeah, my evil plan is to support, right? Okay, thank you.
I'd never denote it as an evil plan. It's a friendly plan.
I don't think I'm an accessibility person either.
I wasn't until 3 years ago. And now I have fallen down that rabbit hole fast and deep.
It's only a deep rabbit hole. It's only deep, and it's very deep with math, right?
Yes.
Very deep. Context, and that's one thing AI doesn't do very well. I don't care. I mean, because I think everybody here in the room knows. I mean, it's very fine for very deep stuff, but you've got to give it context on any subject, really, for it to make sense. And math is so contextually driven when you're describing variables and order of operations. So anyway, I'm letting you guys talk. I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting me say.
I think this is certainly an area which I think us as a group, we could develop some sort of problem statement to evaluate how effective using AI can be for writing alternative text for complex graphs and charts. I think it's an area where we lose our remit really with mathematicians for describing images, because nobody's going to describe such a complex graph if we don't have any examples to do so, and knowing what you can and can't describe can sometimes be difficult.
It just occurred to me as you were talking, if this group has graphs examples they want to submit, why don't you do that? And I'll plug them in and see what happens, and then we can have the experts evaluate. And if nothing else, get closer to prompts. It's like captions on videos, right? There's no such thing as 99.9% automated captions, especially for things like math. But if you use automated captions and get to 80%, you have a lot of your work done for you ahead of time. and maybe it can be something like that. Maybe it's not perfect, but with mathematical expertise, we can all greatly reduce the workload that goes into making accessible math, at least for the visual components.
Absolutely. I think, Norman, you had your hand up first. It doesn't give me a number like Teams does.
Okay. Relevant to Sharon's point there, it so happens that in the current edition of Tugboat, which is the Journal of the Tech Users Group, there's an article about specifically this, using large language models to take LaTeX and explain what the maths is, not convert the maths, not convert it to something different format, but say this is an integral over this with these sort of limits. So precisely that, and it's not a very detailed article, but it says it was saying if you dump the right prompt and a bunch of LaTeX to the right model, then you get surprisingly good results, which is interesting. I mean, I think that particular article is in the current edition, so I think it's a bit about it's a while before they make them open, but it's certainly there, and I'm sure I have no one object to me passing it on if anyone was interested.
No, absolutely. Just pop the link in the chat, that'd be great.
Well, the link, it won't work because it's not public. But
I see.
I will pass the link on just for future reference. But if someone mails me offline, I can surely. I don't think it's. Perhaps can try that link. I don't think it's visible, but okay. If someone mails me, I can pass it on. I'm sure no one would terribly object.
Oh, it's not visible. No, username and password.
It requires authorization.
Yeah. I think it's a year. They have something like a year embargo.
Okay. Yeah, please. The more links, the better.
But mainly.
Tug is amazing.
Absolutely. It's also one of my deep dive places on the internet where you can just get lost for hours and hours and walk away with a different understanding of a different delimiter and be like, wow, that's just made my week. I think Ben Watson had their hand up, but
yeah, well, Norman sort of stole my thunder. He sort of referred to it anyway. I was but in terms of captioning, I think that does still feel like uncharted territory for most people, getting equations to be captured correctly in lecture recordings, that kind of thing. And I think it's early days, but I was speaking to somebody from Verbit, who is probably one of the foremost kind of caption remediation companies, the other day, and they've got this new thing called Captivate, which is an AI driven ASR. So the model is that you inject your own local glossaries into the AI, and of course over time it will learn and improve. And it's slightly more expensive than ASR, but that's because they have like experts monitoring your particular captions, your dictionary, the vocabulary that's informing the AI that's making your captions more accurate. So over time it'll improve. And what they were suggesting is that does have quite a good role to play in the world of STEM. CNN, for example, have just adopted that as their main captioning platform for live events. The only thing at the moment I'm not completely clear about is whether if you had a live event, say a lecture being used with one of these, and it's not just Verbit, I imagine we'll see a load of people doing this, whether at the end of it you can then get that transcript that's been generated, and then that can be the thing that gets tied to the pre-recorded media thing that ends up going into your lecture capture system. I think there's great potential for that. It would only be an issue if the academic then went and edited it, because there was a load of babble at the beginning and therefore the VTT file wouldn't naturally match up. So there's a few things there, but it does sound quite promising. So we're going to give it a trial. So I'll let you know how we get on.
That would be absolutely amazing and very, very timely as well. So, is there anything else anyone would like to add before we rally through our planned agenda?
I'll add something just because it's on the topic of large language models and AI, and because it's something I did this morning, we recently got a campus license for a thing called MathPix, some people might have heard of, and it is bookily good, and it's magic. What it does is it turns well, it does a variety of things, but the key thing is it turns PDFs into LaTeX and HTML, so it unscrambles the egg. And it does so much better than you think it would, in the sense that it can tell that it produces very respectable LaTeX, which turns into very good PDF, and the HTML is also very good. Sorry, cat. So, and it says HTML is a good accessibility output. That means that you can go from, well, you could basically go a rather weird route from LaTeX to PDF to HTML if there weren't other ways of doing that. So I mentioned that just because it's in my head, because I spent a chunk of this morning with my mouth gaping open.
I look forward to, in our next meeting, hearing more about your initial introduction about it, and then also all the issues that you then find with it.
Not so far.
That's often how my experience goes when I'm using new tools. It's first the doors are blown open, and then I'm slowly closing the doors again, saying, this wasn't as good as I wished it could be. But MathPix has got a really good reputation.
Sorry, just on a slightly different, related note. There was a Jisc kind of pilot around JamWorks. We had a couple of interested staff, and we actually rejected from the pilot. I was just wondering, did anyone kind of take, or any other institutions take part in that? It's kind of billed as a kind of AI note taking. It scrapes Panopto tool to support, and they kind of quite prominently on their sort of materials sort of say it can support neurodivergent, accessible, inclusive kind of practices. I don't know if anyone got involved in that thing from Jisc. I don't know if anyone heard of that or has heard of them at all. I'll put the link to the Jisc thing and the links to their website as well, but just wondering. I'm gonna guess from the stunned silence, no one's heard of JamWorks, but yeah, it I guess there's a lot of things springing up in this space as well.
What does JamWorks focus on doing? I've not.
So I think it's trying to summarize or kind of redigest notes. So basically, support students with taking notes. So I don't think it's necessarily optimized for the kind of the STEM use case, but I think the stuff around it, it can ingest sort of video and kind of regular text content. Well, was slightly interesting, and then it can sort of produce. The outputs can be short summaries or digests or podcasts or kind of flashcards, that kind of thing. So it's a kind of note-taking companion. I think that's if I remember correctly.
I will reach out to our library staff about that one, because if we did get it, it's more likely to be taken in through the library rather than through us. But I put in the chat as well an action for JamWorks users to get in touch, because at the end of this meeting I was going to write up all of the bullet points and any actions for everyone as well, so we can keep a track of where we are and who's discussing what. I
think rather than an actual pilot, I think we were just going to have a demo and a play with it when I get a bit of time. So if anyone's interested, I can feed that back.
Awesome. Okay, so the first thing on the agenda, on our real life agenda, is we have a new Google site. Huzzah, I hear you cry. The Google site is looking very, very empty yet, because I didn't want to put too much onto it without getting our community's ideas. So I'm going to pop a link into the chat. I want you all to explore what you see. I then have this Padlet that I've made. Let's just get links, invite.
Beautiful.
Hopefully you can all access that Padlet and write something in there as well. But what I want to do is spend 5 minutes or so just having a click through the website. I want to see if you think the actual structure of the website works well, if I'm missing any major, what's the right word? Major landmarks across it. Because we've spoken about this quite a lot, Cordelia and I, and GitHub is amazing, but it's very focused on a technical audience. And we want this working group to be engaging for those who don't have that technical audience, because often people will be engaging with groups like this because they are looking for support in specific areas and they might not be from that technical background. So we're looking to sort of reposition where we are hosting our content. Unless anyone is an absolute GitHub diehard and wants to argue with me, I'm more than happy to hear the opposites. I use Git a lot, so I think it's amazing. But I think for this group, we can put something more sort of person focused out there. So what I've done is I've got a homepage. The homepage is tried to keep it a bit clean, quite simple, and it should have all of what we do, what our focus is, so it's a bit easy to understand who we are, our main aim. So I think every community should have an aim as to what we do, so we can always go back to that to center what we are doing, so we have a clear domain of where we want to focus our efforts and why we're meeting as a group. There's a nice big button to join the Jisc mailing list as well, because that's a really good way to keep in contact. And there's also a get involved button right at the bottom as well. And what that will do is that will send myself and Cordelia a personal email address. So if you have any ideas, or if you wanted to put something onto the agenda, if you've got a presenter that you would like to come along, then you can get in contact with us to do so. We're more than happy to take on ideas in that area. Under the, let me show on the screen and then I can do a walkie-talkie. Okay. Then you will see my screen. Wonderful. Yes, Josh, you have your hand up.
Sorry, it's. I don't know how useful this is. What one thing that we're sort of struggling with is in terms of accessibility of kind of maths content is that a lot of so physicists, chemical engineers, the wider STEM people will see something about maths and not necessarily oh, that's not for me because I'm not necessarily a pure mathematician, or I and I think I'm not, and I appreciate that it's cool. The main list started being the accessible maths main list. I'm not saying we switched that. I'm just wondering if a kind of inclusion of like the wider STEM thing is useful at some point, just because it's well economists, everyone is kind of needs to engage with it if they're using maths, not necessarily that they're mathematicians. So that's just a general point.
That's a fantastic point, and I want you to remember that point when we move on to the second activity that I've planned, because I think it's something we as a group should explore. What's our domain? Is it purely just in maths, or are we there to branch out into other areas as well, even specialize in other areas? Because I know that chemistry is one department at the University of Southampton which is very keen to improve their sort of inclusivity of their learning content. And at the moment, where we've been focusing so much on maths, we're not right now in a position to support them with that. And that's something that I personally quite like to change. So on this website, we have the homepage, which is this nice page. We have a resources page, which is pretty blank. because I've not populated links onto it just yet. We have a glossary, so this could be populated from the glossary we already have in GitHub. So we're making sure that we have a common understanding of terms and descriptions across our working group. We then have software and tools. So again, we've got on the GitHub, but also embedded in our sort of like master document as well. We have a range of software and tools which we have spoken about. Some people have evaluated, some people have purchased, and I think it would be really useful to actually collate that into a list just with a description of what that tool actually does. So then we can get a good idea of what's available out there, and also who we can talk to about it, knowing that Norman's just purchased Maths is going to be extremely useful for in 6 weeks' time when we meet again. When I have that conversation with my line manager to say, Maths sounds really good. Norman says it's great. So let's explore that. And I think having that common understanding on here is a nice way to direct people to where we can be using those types of tools. We have a members directory. So what I would like to do is take any information that you want to share. I'm happy to have as many people on this directory as possible, because I think it's useful to be able to say, oh, so-and-so is using this piece of software, and then I can come into the directory and I can find their contact details and contact them. One of the hardest thing about the STEM accessibility journey so far for myself has actually been finding the right people to talk to at other institutions. And I'm hoping this kind of bridges that gap. I kind of want to include all of our different logos for all of the different universities and institutions that we're representing, so people get an idea of how big this working group is. So when we are starting to collate information of where it's coming from. And then finally, we have our previous meetings area, so including the meeting stories. So that would be the minutes of every meeting will be linked in here. And I haven't chosen this thumbnail, but the recordings for these meetings will then end up on this area here. I'm not sure if there's anything that I'm currently missing from the website other than content. It obviously needs fleshing out and migrating from GitHub. Just have a look to see. Was anyone able to access the Padlet link? Or has it just not populated on your own? Maybe it's me. Creators, maybe to do that one. I stop sharing back up. Does that Padlet link work for anyone? Awesome. So really what we're looking for is those initial thoughts. Do you think the color's nice? Do you think the layout is good? If you want to be added to the members directory, I've tried to populate myself in there so you have an example. And I think there's 3 other names of people that I very much expect who will want to be in there. What content should be migrated, because I don't want to be responsible for anything left behind. I think pretty much everything from GitHub should come over. Who should have editing permissions? So this is a conversation that we can have in activity 2. And if there's anything that you'd like to add onto the website, then I'm very much happy to do that. The website itself is built off of Google Sites, so it's not actually tied to our institution, which was by design, because at the moment this working group has a rolling leadership. So after 12 months, Cordelia and I will pass the baton to someone else. And my idea was that we can pass the site on to someone else as well, so it continues to be managed and used just making sure that what we do now is sustained into the future. So, someone's added on there that making sure that the site is accessible is a very, very important, which I agree. There is the keen among you will have noticed a accessibility statement right at the bottom of the website. Whilst this is it's a working group website and it's not technically covered under PSBAR, I would still like the website to be at least AA WCAG compliant. So once the website is ready to start sharing fully beyond this group and have it on the surface web kind of thing, I will go through, do some accessibility testing and populate that accessibility statement at the bottom. Because that's always good fun as well. Get started. Yeah, something for newbies. That's a great idea.
So just to expand on that, so that was me posted that. I think, you know, before going into, you know, talking about Chiron or like book down, something kind of easy for you know, for someone who is from, you know, is the only person in the institution thinking about this and they're just getting started. And like I know the glossary does some of that job as well, but maybe like one or two resources, just because I think, you know, if you're coming from outside this area, it's going to be, or it is overwhelming. I think we've had people on the in these groups, you know, showing that too.
Absolutely. Has there been any exploration? That's a great question, Sharon. I had a little look into it, and there are some Stack Exchange conversations which I've not dived into just yet about having MathJax supported on Google sites. So once the site's up and running, that's certainly something we can look to do. Yeah, absolutely. Center it more on accessibility as a topic rather than not just maths accessibility or STEM accessibility.
Okay, I am not sure, but I thought I heard that MathJax is being deprecated. And I can't find that anywhere, but I know being shocked about hearing that. No one else has heard it. I must be wrong, but if we could check on that. Because I don't imagine things like that. And right now I'm going to check that it's not MathML.
I'm not finding anything about it being deprecated. It would make a lot of tools a lot less accessible if it was deprecated, that's for sure. There's a lot of LMS providers and learning.
Okay, sorry for the scare. There is something there's something major like that though. Web-based that's being deprecated. I don't know what it is. Looks like certain fields in MathML are being deprecated, but not MathML, the whole shebang.
Mm.
So my apologies for the fear or for the scare. And I guess I'll just throw out to the group, if y'all are aware of anything web-based with math that is being deprecated next time we meet. Because I know I saw something. It was web-based math of some sort was being deprecated. Or maybe I'm just senile.
Not at all.
And it looks like MathML version 4 was published in October 2023. So that will have
okay. That's
that will have
going anywhere.
deprecated some MathML version 3 things. I'm sure. So that it may be that's what you're remembering.
I hope so.
Amazing. For those who have added your names into the members directory that you want to be added, Cordelia and I will follow up with you afterwards with a personal email just to get all the information and lovely headshots as well, because seeing your photo online is just the best feeling, isn't it? Wider reading, that's a really good suggestion. Sandwich is optional, yeah.
If you also have some resources you'd like linked from their site, feel free to kind of share them too. I think there's some space in the notes or something, but yeah, we might as well pull resources we already have rather than creating new ones and seeing where we are type thing.
Now that I have some good feedback, thank you everyone for putting all of your thoughts and that time into that. We have a better direction of what we want our website to do. The second activity that I have planned for us is to gain more of an understanding about what we want our community to do. So we have a range of different expertise across the group, and a lot of people come to this group because they're looking to build their knowledge around this area. So it's sort of discussing how we can better support that. So what I've got is I'll share my screen and give you a walkthrough again. Okay. So I've got a model of our community of practice, and it's broken up into 3 ways. We have our practice, our community, and our domain. For some of you, this may look very familiar. Essentially, what I want to know is, where do we find the value in our practice? Is it from hosting workshops where we sit down and practice things as a group? Is it simply by collating our resources and posting them and sharing them? Is it having those group discussions at the beginning? I know that's always very valuable. Is it sharing our personal experiences around it? So more user stories around using certain tools, or is it having external presenters coming in? I'm not saying we're going to focus in just one of these areas. It's just if everyone says external presenters is amazing, and I want to see more of that, and that's somewhere where we can focus our efforts going forward. Or if you decide the group discussions is my bread and butter, then that's where I want to be. And yeah, that was a sandwich pun. I think we've established a working group in joke already. Underneath that, we have the community design. So this is more about the administration of the group, because we want the group to be self-propellant. We want it to be sustainable long into the future, because I think we will find this quite useful. So we want to know if the dates work quite well. At the moment, Cordelia and I have it down for every 6 weeks that we will meet. Whether the times work quite well, so at Friday afternoon, if that's absolutely impossible for you, then please just pop a comment in there to say Friday afternoons aren't good. I do appreciate that if you say that and you're currently in the meeting, then it's a bit confusing. But I'm also relying on other people watching the recording as well to feed into this. In some communities of practice, they also have community roles as well. So whether or not it should just be Cordelia and I as co-chairs, but whether or not we should have other roles within our community as well, like a website administrator and all of those kind of things like that. We also then should explore how we want to collaborate, or if we want to collaborate. I think it's more how we want to collaborate with similar groups as well. So the Talmo group, for example, is quite a popular one in this space. I'm sure most people have heard of the Talmo group, teaching and learning maths online. And I think building and fostering some connections between them and between us would be a really good idea. And then finally, right at the bottom, this is where I was asking you to keep that idea, Josh, is where do we want our domain to actually sit? Do we want to focus only on equations, or do we want to branch out into other areas across the sort of STEM landscape, as it were? So we probably do want to cover things like complex graphs and charts. Do we also want to start branching out into how we're actually using assistive technology in this area? Probably. Converting STEM documents, that's a common workflow for us all. Coming into different types of notation, so chemistry, code. Musical notation is one that I'm often asked about at our institution. It can be quite difficult, well, surprisingly difficult to translate a historical piece of musical notation into something that is accessible. And then do we want to go down the route of community problem statements, where each time we meet, we set a focus for us to look at one of these issues in each meeting. We share our experiences, our resources around them, and then we continue on to the next meeting looking at a different area, just so we keep our focus nice and concise on where we actually want to put our efforts in at the meetings, but also in the time between the meetings as well. Also, It's a really, really lovely idea. My colleague Matthew Deepers and I met with a representative from Vision Island last year, and it quite possibly was the best meeting I had last year. It was really, really insightful, just about where they're supporting people and how they're supporting people. It was just brilliant. Really, really recommend getting in contact there. But you're right, this is something that we could probably look to do, is engage in the charities and other organisations outside of higher education. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but please do continue putting on any notes that you have, any thoughts and comments. And we only have 10 minutes left of the meeting, so we have managed to fill an hour on our maiden meeting. So what I'm going to do is pass over to Cordelia to manage any other business, so I can have a drink, because I've been talking a lot. Lillian makes it look so easy.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Luke. That's a lot of work you've put in. It looks really good. So yes, any other business? There's kind of trawling the kind of general community stuff. And there seems to have been quite a lot on accessible, what we talked about earlier, actually, accessibility with more complex images, descriptions, and long form, short form descriptions. And there are a couple of new resources that I've seen come out. I don't think anyone's here who's kind of associated with any of that, but does anyone have a kind of I know there's been lots and lots of discussion about since our last meeting about kind of text. I guess we kind of did this earlier, but no. Okay, everyone seems happy. Cool. And then the Christian has given his apologies. Yeah, I guess the only other thing is the kind of usual stuff, which mainly we've done, of kind of members updates, and if there's any other stuff people want bringing up. Is there anything else people want to discuss this month? There's nothing officially. I think we've covered everything on the kind of official agenda. There's one point about discussing Microsoft Word, which is kind of historical one if people want to. But that seems to be unpopular. Josh, yes.
Sorry, it's me again. So I don't know if it fits in with this sort of Wenger model, but it kind of touches on something that we're thinking about at the moment. So for example, to notebooks, there are some kind of long-standing accessibility issues. We're currently, so we're buying into a hosted version of Jupyter notebooks. These are for writing kind of code in a sort of kind of hosted kind of easy to get going kind of environment. Very popular data science, but kind of seems to be taking kind of lots of kind of coding courses taking this approach. Our vendor kind of basically serves or hosts this open source software, but essentially there's some big accessibility issues, and so I guess one, is anyone interested in sort of possibly putting asking this question if you are using Jupyter Hub or if you are using a hosted solution, you know, to your vendor. So we're using one that specifically hosts Jupyter Hub services, so that's notable. Who are very good, but obviously they're you know, there's only so much they can do. But And the second thing is basically, is there a space for community pressure? So for things like, I'm just thinking like, tool X doesn't support like MathJax. Can we, as a kind of collective, apply some sort of community thing to say, this polling tool or this, or sorry, Blackboard, what else would be great, but and then like have an open letter from our group with 30 signatures on it. Would that be another thing? So 2 questions there. If anyone's using Jupyter and has any answers, that'd be great. I've heard Google Colab.
I know people who are using Jupyter notebooks in their programming courses. I mainly deal with the stack stuff, so I can ask them. I think we're using Notable as well. And
if you're in Edinburgh, it makes sense because Notable's based in Edinburgh. Yes. So it's basically an issue with essentially Jupyter generally and even Jupyter Lab. It doesn't play well with screen readers. So and yes, Norman, I'll put a link across to the if you're running it locally, it still has the same issue. So even if you like a local Anaconda installation, the screen reader will still run into the same problems.
Interesting to know.
Yes, my interest there is partly in the hosted thing itself, separately from the accessibility issues.
Yeah.
Picking up on your second point too, I know previously we have there's definitely been at least one case where we've lobbied a tech group for a bit of technology. But yeah, it'd be good if there was a kind of more structured way so we could open up those discussions earlier. But maybe that's part of what the kind of Jisc mailing list and having a kind of discussion forum would be useful for, is you could say this isn't working for me, and then we could open it up a bit. Constantine, did you have your hand up? Or have you?
No, I think like this is more general about not only, documents like static documents, but about other online tools we're using in this community, like Jupyter notebooks, like stack JSX graphs that we may have in various online documents and things like that. So it's not like about just static documents that students download.
Steve?
Yeah, and I just wanted to alert the group to the fact that at Durham University, excuse me, we are about in the next few weeks, I think, to implement the latest LTI integration of the Chiron tool on our Learn Ultra service, and I've been trying to write some documentation for that. Now, the documentation that already exists on the Chiron website is really excellent, and it's not in any capacity a criticism of Christian's work on that, because it's brilliant. But I think I need to be able to contextualize it locally for staff who are familiar perhaps with finding their way around inside Blackboard Learn, but aren't necessarily that familiar with doing stuff with Chiron. So I've been trying to write some documentation that takes them through the process of using that. We had some previously that I drafted where the LTI tool was not in play. So you went to the Chiron website with your kind of LaTeX output or whatever, and you ran it through that, and then you ended up with a zip file, and you had to shove that into the content collection area and set all the permissions and so on inside Learn Ultra. Staff have been doing that at Durham with a reasonable degree of success, but there hasn't been as much take up as we'd wanted yet, partly because it is a bit of a long-winded, convoluted way around of doing it, and I think that kind of demoralizes quite a lot of people quite early on in the process. And also we have had this promise of this updated LTI coming down the lane, and it is now on the horizon. So I've been writing some documentation to do with that, and so I'm obviously happy to share experience with other people or make myself available for chatter for other people who are about to move on to Learn Ultra. My personal career has taken me from what was Blackboard Classic or Original or something into an institution that then used Canvas for years. And then I've come back to Durham about 18 months ago, and I've come back to the world of Learn Ultra. So I think there's a little gap in the middle where I've missed a bunch of stuff. So I don't know how significantly different doing this in Blackboard Classic or Original, whatever you want to call it, might be from doing it inside Learn Ultra. But I have got a reasonable amount and growing experience of faffing around with it in Learn Ultra now. So I'm happy to make myself available under the proviso that I'm no expert and don't know the answers to a lot of stuff.
Well, we have started started evaluating Chiron at Southampton, and we have one instructor who span it up on a Moodle server to begin with as a proof of concept, and he really ran away with it. We then implemented the LTI, and we keep running into the issue of it actually failing and with its build logs. So it doesn't actually build the output file. So you may very well receive an email from me in the next day or so.
Well, that will teach me to stick my head above the parapet then.
Thanks, Steve.
It's actually interesting recently because I've been making accessible lecture notes available as a lecturer, and coming across these problems that like I knew existed because of this group and discussions, and coming across them in person and the annoyances is quite interesting, where you think I kind of intellectually knew what these problems were, but facing the problems is different. So yeah, I think it's important to have the kind of yeah, notes and good documentation to support people, even though we know this should be there anyway.
I'm not going to claim that my documentation's great in any capacity. I mean, we've got, I think, a relatively small user group at the moment, but there are an awful lot of people out there who have historically been producing what we might now consider to be inaccessible content, that, and there's some poor bugger's job is going to be to go and revisit all of that. So I think we need to make our support for this as transparent and usable as possible, so the academic staff can readily take what they may have produced in the past, which might not be meeting the appropriate accessibility guidelines, and if you like, recreate new content that does meet accessibility requirements without us as the kind of support team for the faculty being drawn into an endless 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year worth of content conversion for the next 5 years of my life. I'm anxious to avoid that kind of early grave.
I think everyone is, but yeah, it is a big job, and I think both sides need support, which is kind of the problem. Or the solution. Cool, that is 3 o'clock. Does anyone else have anything they want/need/want to say? Thoughts, feelings, or complaints? All welcome.
Can I just say, I think the whole kind of structured site for a user community is going to be a really beneficial thing, because I'm still really new to all of this. I previously worked in an institution where I was supporting health sciences and sport and stuff like that, and that was all great. I knew how the heart worked and how to run on a treadmill and all this kind of stuff. And now I moved into a job and it's all kind of science, maths, computing science kind of stuff. And a lot of it is still pretty impenetrable to me because I am a political science graduate from years ago and I don't have this kind of background. So knowing that there's a community out there that is not only willing but happy to exchange resources and help it's like a real nice crutch to know that you guys are around and happy to receive comments and things. So the community bit of it I love. It's brilliant. Thank you.
I think there's also Luke and me have definitely discussed this. There's a kind of aim to go beyond the website and reach out more. So hopefully we get the discussion forum going. There's a rough idea to kind of start a quasi newsletter type thing, which should help foster that community a bit more and get some more discussion going. Cool. If that's everything, then I will let you get on with your Friday afternoons. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.